Hello, everybody. It's Catholic Dad, episode 141. Confession is an act of obedience. Now, um, the fallen nature of man. How did the fallen nature of man occur? It occurred in the Garden of Eden. God said, "Hey, you can have all this stuff except for those apples over there, right?" And so, what did they do? Well, they ate the apple. So, the fallen nature of man occurred because of an act of disobedience to God. Okay. Now, confession, however, why do we have to go to confession? Well, first off, confession is was something that Jesus said could occur. And, he comes back, he's resurrected, he's meeting with the apostles. The first thing he says is, "Peace be with you." He breathes the Holy Spirit upon him. He says, "Peace be with you." And then he says, "As my Father sent me, I now send you." And then he says, that's the first thing, "As my Father sent me, I now sent you," meaning go form a church. Then he says, "Whatever sins you remit shall be remitted, and whatever sins you retain shall be retained by my Father," meaning that the first thing he eventually he says to him is, "Go form a church." The second thing he says is, "Go forgive sin." Now, why was Jesus telling the apostles to go forgive sin? And the answer to this one's very easy. It's because he meant it. It's because he was serious that man could actually have the capacity to forgive sin. He was telling the apostles to go do it. First, you got to form a church, and then you go forgive sin. And so that's where the sacrament of reconciliation or penance comes from. And so, and here's the deal, right? So we have all these sins on our souls, and we're walking around with them all day long, and we're walking around with our fallen nature as well. Now, we're walking around with our fallen nature because we are disobedient. Because Adam and Eve were disobedient to the Lord. And then we're walking around with our own sins, the ones we personally took on ourselves because we were disobedient as well. Now, doesn't it make sense to combat acts of disobedience that you actually have to do an action of obedience? Like, you actually have to go to the church. You actually have to meet with a priest. You have to actually sit down and fess up. You have to actually say, "I'm guilty. I did it. And oh, by the way, I'm no longer going to do it." That's why confession is an act of obedience. It's an act of obedience because it combats the acts of disobedience of Adam and Eve, as well as the act of disobedience when we sin. And so I think it makes complete sense. And also, by the way, Jesus told the apostles they had the capacity to forgive sin. If that wasn't meant to be taken literally, why did he say it? And if it wasn't meant to be taken literally, what else aren't we supposed to take literally from Jesus? No, that's supposed to be taken literally. And so the Catholic Church, I think, is exactly right that to combat disobedience, you have to have acts of obedience through the church hierarchy, which he instituted after the resurrection. So this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. God bless. Get to Mass, pray the daily rosary, and bring some friends to Mass. I was thinking about that, whether it be Catholic or not. Just bring them there, and maybe they can witness something and be a part of Christian community. Okay, God bless, and have a nice day. Good night.